Brothers, we've been chosen. The Lord's spoken to me. Visions of what's to come. A rise of good against evil. The first shall be last. The last shall be first. Stand with us. Stand with us.
The birth of a nation.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the AwardsWatch Oscar podcast. I'm your host, Eric Anderson. Today is Sunday, August 21st, and I have with me today two fantastic and favorite Gold Rush gang members. I have Chris. Hello, Chris.
Hey.
And Julia.
Hi, Eric.
How
Hi,
are you?
Chris. I'm doing great.
Excellent. This is going to be a bit of a, I guess, not to say too much, but of a special episode of the podcast in that we're going to be primarily addressing the Nate Parker, the birth of a nation controversy right now that is happening. And it's inevitable that we need to do it, but it's also necessary. And just in case you haven't been on the internet at all for the last week, the controversy at hand is the 1999 rape case that happened against Nate Parker and his friend Gene Celestin at Penn State, where they were both accused of rape by a 18-year-old student there. And in the end, Parker was acquitted and Celestin was convicted, but after 6 months, his conviction was overturned. So, it's this is a very delicate conversation, and I just want to say right off the bat that we want to be as honest and respectful and balanced and complete as we can about the information that we have and the responses that have come since then from Parker, from Fox Searchlight, as well as just the sheer volume of personal responses that have been given since then. Because there's a really wide range of responses to this. Some people have felt that Nate Parker's Facebook message response has sort of painted himself a little bit as a victim, and that his belief in God has turned him into, a better man, a better person, and that he kind of just wants to move past this. And obviously, I have to imagine that if you are in the middle of an incredibly huge controversy like this, you would want to just move past it. But it is just August right now. The film comes out in October. And we had actually talked about this since the beginning of the year as something that Fox Searchlight and Parker were going to probably have to address in the press. And when it did happen last week through some press coverage and interviews that Parker did, it really, really exploded. And one of the things that happened as a result was that originally the victim's name was redacted, but it was not redacted well enough. So her name was discovered, and in the process of all of these interviews and everything that Parker was doing, and even after Fox Searchlight's response of support of Parker, it was revealed that their victim had committed suicide in 2012. And that added a layer of tragedy to an already existing tragic situation. And that kind of, I guess, gets you caught up to where things are right now in this situation for Parker, for Fox Searchlight, for anybody and everybody involved. I don't want to so much ask direct opinions from you guys, but then I kind of do as well. I kind of want to put you on the spot. I want to put myself on the spot with this, because there's a lot of elements of this conversation to be had, and like I said at the top, I do hope that we can cover as much of it as possible with as much integrity as possible, because yes, we can look at the superficial element of how does this affect, the Oscar chances of this film, because we are an award site. This is what we talk about, and yes, that does have to be an element of what we're talking about. But the bigger conversation that's really happening is, for some people, the immediate comparisons that came up of Woody Allen and Roman Polanski, and how Hollywood and the general public is going to treat this and treat Parker. And even within that, there are so many elements that need a deep dive. And so, Chris, let me ask you first. And if you don't want to reveal a personal opinion, you don't have to. But do you have?
I've got opinions.
Do you have a very Do you have a personal opinion about exactly what the situation is?
Yeah, I think there's a lot to unpack. There's been various stages that have unfolded. Obviously, it all started with the Parker interview, and then Fox Searchlight came out and basically stood by him. Then there was this whole PR campaign in the media. And I think something that has got lost is the fact that there is a victim in this, and this is a tragedy. And I think one of the things that makes Parker look so bad is that in that original interview, he's tried so hard to victimize himself almost. It's all about how he's recovered, and it doesn't paint the most sympathetic picture of him when there is this victim. This person has lost her life because of what happened to her 15 years ago, and that seems to have got lost in all of this mess, really.
Yeah. And Julia, what about you? What is your just initial gut take?
Well, I'm with Chris in that the worst thing about how the whole subject being dealt with right now is his reaction. It's absurd how he thinks he should put himself as the victim in this scenario. Mm-hmm. And how we should feel sorry for him for how this incident, as they call it, affected his life with no regard whatsoever for the victim. So there's that. But I actually want to address your initial question regarding how Hollywood treated Polanski or Allen and how it will treat Nate Parker.
Okay.
I think there are two important distinctions here. Regardless of your own personal opinion, both Woody Allen and Roman Polanski were already established names. Regardless of if you think this should affect or not your opinion about his work, Nate Parker is no one in Hollywood. This is supposed to be his big break. Mm-hmm. But I don't think that's the biggest issue here. Let's ignore Woody Allen for a moment and consider Polanski from when he actually got his latest Oscar. It was early 2000s. We were nowhere near close to our internet culture the way we are today. So someone at the forums actually brought up Cosby's accusations and how different they were portrayed from when he was first accused in, I think, 2005, mm-hmm. from when he was accused last year or a couple of years ago. So I don't think Roman Polanski would have been treated the same way he was with The Pianist had The Pianist been released today.
I think I would have to agree with you on that. They were both already very established Allen and Polanski, meaning artists, and there was the controversy seemed, for them, seemed to exist more in the public's eye than in the bubble of Hollywood, which pretty consistently is able to overlook incredible amounts of sexism and racism and homophobia and many, many things in the name of the greater good of art and rewarding art. Whether it be Cosby or Allen or Polanski or Clint Eastwood and his most recent bizarre comments. And there is a pretty consistent ability in Hollywood to turn a blind eye to that, which I guess brings me to one of the elements that I think is a distinction outside of the fact that Nate Parker is an unknown compared to them. And you can also throw in Mel Gibson in all of that group too, obviously. And the distinction being the issue of race, in that all of those men, and to be clear, this is a male issue, versus Nate Parker, who is black. And I'm not immediately pulling out a race card as a factor of blame, because we kind of haven't really seen a lot of that yet. I'm wondering if there is a fear within the press to present this as too much of a race issue. I know I did read Lou Luminek did a little bit of that. I thought his approach to it was, I don't know, maybe a little not as sensitive as it could be. I think you have to be really careful, especially if you are a white person talking about non-white issues. It's a very elevated position to be talking from, and I am a white person trying to talk about a non-white person, and I completely understand my position in that, and I always have to be very careful that I don't sound smug or arrogant or like I know things that I don't. But like I said, this is a part of the conversation of this issue, and it's clearly also coming off of, when we add the Oscar element to it, the Oscar so white issue. I think too, if The Birth of a Nation was not already being positioned as such an awards candidate, it would be a very different conversation, but it is, and so here we are. Gosh, I didn't really want to jump right into the awards element of it, so maybe we'll kind of hold off on that right now. But I do want to ask each of you what your feelings are on the issue of Nate Parker being black versus, the white men that have also been accused or convicted of crimes like this. Go ahead, jump in, anybody.
Yeah, well, I sort of hate that it might, there's been a few articles now, and I sort of hate that it might be getting turned into a race issue, because even if you take it as an isolated incident, you ignore Woody Allen and Roman Polanski, if we just take that out of it for a second, and they're separate issues, that doesn't make what Nate Parker did anymore indefensible.
Yes.
What he did deserves to be highlighted, it deserves to be criticized, he deserves to be punished for what he did, no matter what is racist? Like, this is first and foremost a issue about rape. This isn't a race issue, and he
Yes.
deserves to be called out on what's happened.
Yes, I am in agreement with that. Not just to throw it to you guys without giving my own opinion. I do think that the issue of Parker's race has not been brought up as a excuse or any type of leniency that I've read so far, and I do think that's a really good thing.
Except that there has been the articles that say that people are bringing it up right now because he's black, which is not the case at all.
Yes, I agree. And there's a wonderful article by Roxanne Gay in the New York Times.
Yes.
Nate Parker and the Limits of Empathy. That is a very, very good version of that. I would really encourage people to read it. I guess I kind of want to talk about the race issue because there is an element of, I don't even know how to say this. The victim in the case with Parker and Celestin was white. Nate Parker's wife is white. It seems, at least to me, that the general public, because this is, sort of being focused on the awards movie element of this, doesn't seem to be really on this. I don't see and I don't hear from a lot of people just in the general public that are really kind of even aware of it. But I don't think it can go by without the history of black men and white women in this country. That I think if the wrong section of public gets their hands on this as a news story, that we will see Trump rally level amounts of viciousness and racism. And again, not excusing Parker in any way, or there is no difference, obviously, what the race of his victim was. But I do have to take into context the historical element of black men and white women, especially as in the same breath we're about to have a film about the very case that allowed interracial marriage when Loving comes out in November. So and I'm not even sure what I'm saying on it. I don't really know. I'm saying it out loud so that I can even try and understand myself what impact that this element of race might have on this situation.
Yeah.
I'm thinking that it. I mean, I want to think that it probably won't, and I certainly don't want it to be something that disguises or changes or obfuscates the greater issue at hand, and that is the actual rape. And to be clear, and as I said at the top, Parker was acquitted. Celestin, his friend, was not. But if you look at the amount of information available, the phone call that Parker made, it makes it very, 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 very difficult to imagine a scenario in which the accusation is not 100% true.
Yeah, and I think that sort of made... I lost a lot of respect for Fox Searchlight when all of that came out, because their response pretty much disgusted me. The fact that they came out and said, we stand by him, and referred to the fact that, oh, he's innocent. No, like, the evidence is pretty damning when you look at it, and to come out and your first, like, response to be citing his innocence was ridiculous, in my opinion.
I mean,
to be fair, Oscar race is disgusting. We follow it, we have fun, but
Yeah.
at the end of the day, it's really disgusting. It's how low can you go so you can get a piece of hardware?
Yeah.
And it shows the worst of people, especially campaign managers and PR managers.
Yeah.
But it actually also shows how low can the person go, can the one who is actually vying for the award. And Nate Parker's response,
Yeah.
it's even more baffling than Fox Searchlight's response.
Yes. Yeah. His response in that interview with Deadline, which was kind of the thing that broke everything. That was really the first interview. That was the first thing that kind of unleashed the floodgates of that. Was very much, I have 5 daughters, I have a wife, my mom, my sisters.
And who brings a 6-year-old to an interview? You're going to talk about rape.
Well, I don't know if he necessarily expected,
Oh yeah, he did. Come on,
to
Eric.
be quite as well. This is
Come
the
on,
thing.
Eric.
I know, but this is the thing.
They set it up so he could talk about it, so
Yeah.
they could get ahead of the story.
Yeah,
They just
okay.
didn't expect for the news to come out that the victim was dead.
Yeah, somebody did not do their homework well enough. But to get to your comment about Fox Searchlight's statement, and I don't imagine, and this is the cynical side of me purely, I couldn't imagine any other statement coming from them. This is a company that spent $17.5 million on this film. It is their main film of the season, and we're looking at a statement that is less, to me, almost less protective of Parker as it is of their own self-interest. It just happens to be that that comment makes it look really, really terrible instead of protective of their self-interest. But
I think they've clearly been put in like the toughest position possible. Like they'll have never had to deal with anything, but I still have a lot of problems with their first comment in response to this, citing his innocence. Like, he's innocent. Like, this isn't an issue. Like, that's not the way.
Yeah, it's an
you
incident.
come out and respond to this.
And that's another thing, and that is the politics of language. That is one of the most, I think, important parts of how this story broke, and that is using language that exonerates in a way that probably shouldn't be used. I think Deadline even used sex case as their phrasing. And that
Sex case is absurd.
That alone is really, really horrible. And that diminishes the victim. It diminishes every victim before and after. And that was really, really, really troubling. That was really troubling. As well as seeing a couple of other outlets that seem to be very, very protective of Fox Searchlight's interest, which is really protective of their own interests, in being able to not be very aggressive against Fox Searchlight's statement and their response to it. And I find that to be part of this greater Hollywood bubble of protection of itself. And I that was one of the worst elements of anything that's happened so far.
I think the entire media and PR campaign has been the worst thing about this.
Yeah.
Like, there's definitely been articles that are worth reading, but the general response from some outlets, like I'll just name the Hollywood Reporter, I think they've come out with some ridiculous articles trying to defend, or I don't even know how to phrase it, but like the article that was saying, oh, it can't be a coincidence, this is coming out during an Oscar campaign, like that was disgusting.
Yeah, they acted like this was some kind of Harvey Weinstein effort to expose something. It was just such a silly and ridiculous and incredibly insensitive. I'm really kind of furious with them.
Come on, to be fair, that would have been something that Harvey Weinstein would have brought up, but not at this time.
Mm-mm.
Everything started because Fox Searchlight themselves tried to get ahead of the story and brought it up in that interview. So it's not a huge conspiracy. It's not because rival studios are setting him up. Mm-mm. Well, they probably would have, but not right now. It would have come up in November, around Oscar voting.
Yeah, I think we were all aware of the story anyway. Like, I don't think we were expecting it to explode like this, but
exactly.
Fox Searchlight were obviously aware as well, and they were clearly trying to get ahead of it themselves. They arranged this interview to make it seem like to get ahead, and it's completely blown up in their face.
Yeah, it definitely has. So, okay, I'm going to play devil's advocate for a moment, because there's, to me anyway, another issue at hand, and that has to do with something that happens in the film. And I haven't seen it, I just know of this scene. So if you don't want to listen to this spoiler element, then, turn this off for 5 minutes. But there is a scene in the film, The Birth of a Nation, where Nat Turner's wife is raped by a slave owner, and that becomes the source or beginning of the rebellion that happens in 1831. But there's two things about this that I want to talk about. One, that historically this is not something that happened. Nat Turner in any of his writings did not acknowledge having a wife, but there are records that the man who owned Nat Turner married him to another slave, but was likely not a valid marriage. So the thing that I'm wondering, and I guess this is my devil's advocate part, is that much has been made by Parker that after this happened, he had his, turn to God moment. And I wonder, since he is the writer and Celestin of this screenplay, if they used this scene, this fictional scene, as a way of having some type of personal catharsis to get past it themselves, and weirdly and almost like really horribly then, are using it as integral to something positive happening after. I guess, am I explaining myself Well, do you know what I mean? It's I'm having I guess a difficult time trying to explain it, but in my head I'm kind of seeing a thought process of, yes, we raped this girl, it was horrible, we want to get past it, we can use this in the film as the moment that kicks off this rebellion. I don't know. I could be completely insane. But that's why I'm trying to play devil's advocate in this and look at it from positions or points of view that, even if it doesn't make sense, might be an element to consider.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, you know how recently there's been this conversation, mainly on TV, about how media has a tendency of using violence, and specifically violence against women, as a way to further the story.
Yes.
And how pointless that is.
Yes.
So if I didn't know anything about Nate Parker and his personal story with rape, I would think this is what this is, which is in itself disgusting.
Yes.
Because it's completely unnecessary, and especially in a movie that's supposed to be based in reality, in historical facts. Mm-hmm. So I would just say it's just a pointless narrative aid that writers without better tools use. But when you consider his own personal history with rape, it becomes dishonest. It becomes... You can't consider it just in itself without thinking about what he has done in the past. So it gets another layer of, Jesus, why?
Yes. And that's kind of part of, I guess, what I'm struggling with this, that this scene exists in the film, and what that means. And then there's even another layer within this, in that the woman playing that character, Gabrielle Union, was raped in real life, and she has spoken about it very publicly. And I obviously have no idea, if she knew anything about Nate Parker's 1999 rape case during the time that this was happening, or how he was able to, coach her through the scene. But it just, gave me the... It just felt like it was just adding more insult to injury to this, to her, to any woman. It was I don't know. I don't even know what to say about it.
Yeah, I think using rape as a narrative device is problematic in general.
Yes.
And now that this story has come out, even if we don't know the motives behind it, the fact that you're even questioning it now, I think, says a lot.
Yeah, I obviously would not have had this situation not been known.
Yeah.
I don't know. I do feel, and I think the reason I feel what my comment was at the top of this ridiculous rambling that I just did was his statement in that Deadline article. And I'll read that. I actually want to read that out loud, because there's it also opens up another thing. He said in the article, "I can't control people. I can't control the way people feel. What I can do is be the most honorable man I can be, live my life with the most integrity that I can, stand against injustice everywhere I see it, lead charges against injustice, against people of color, against the LGBT community. That's me. The black community is my community, the LGBT community too, and the female community. That is my community." That statement is the reason why I felt like the rape was included as a tool in the film. I felt like him and Celestin thought that if they could write this in there as a positive, that they were doing something good. And if that statement had not come along in that article, I would not have thought about it that way. But I mean, even his inclusion talking about the LGBT community is specious at best, because
especially considering his previous
comments are completely against that, and that's the secondary issue that he was going to have to address during press junkets and interviews. So that was another example of trying to get ahead of something before it became an issue. So I just feel like that statement is I feel like it's false. I feel like it is an excuse, and I feel like it is saving face.
Yeah.
And dishonest.
It's
not the most honorable man he can be. It's the most dishonorable thing that he could be doing.
Yeah, I hate that statement, and it comes back to what I said at the start. Like, he's tried to victimize himself, and it's made him look worse in the process.
Yes.
And it's a statement so clearly written by a PR person.
Yeah.
But so clearly that you just can't defend it.
No.
It sounds false. It sounds baffling considering what he has said in the past. And it's clearly something that he didn't write himself.
It certainly doesn't seem like it, yeah. I would have to agree. So, yeah, so that was, I guess that was my reasoning for that, for really trying to examine his motives in this. So looking at all of this and thinking about all of this, I think we've all expressed what our personal opinions are about it. But what do we think? What are we thinking about the overarching things like the success of the film and the visibility of this huge controversy on the public at large? Do we think that it is going to even be a factor? Do you think that the focus that they said that they were going to have on churches and getting some very grassroots type of viewings and support is going to make this a non-issue for people that would want to see the movie anyway?
Well, are we talking in terms of Oscars? Are we talking
not really yet. I just mean in terms of people that are going to see the movie that would see it anyway, knowing this history, and also people that don't know it because they just go to movies and they don't read about movies and they don't have visibility inside this movie bubble that we do.
I think it will be very split. I don't think it's not going to have an impact. It's clearly going to affect the films. Like, it's going to affect the film. Like, I really don't have much interest in supporting the film anymore or seeing it, but there's still a large proportion of the population that are going to say that you need to separate the art from the controversy or whatever. I think it was the IndieWire podcast that said something along those lines. Like, you need to separate the two. So,
yeah, I believe Anne Thompson said she was disturbed by people that can't do that.
Yeah, that's
which was interesting.
Calling that disturbing is
disturbing in itself.
Disturbing in
Yeah.
itself. Yes.
Yeah.
A bit. But this is something that comes up every single time that a Woody Allen film pops up, and again, I this is the thing that I kind of want to think about. You know, we are participants in a movie website and talk about movies, and we do so because that is the thing that we like to talk about the most. That is not the focus of the majority of the people in the world. So I don't want to ever feel like, you know, we're talking about something within our own bubble. And but there are plenty of people outside of, you know, AwardsWatch and all of the ilk that have a tremendous issue with Woody Allen and will never, or vow to never see a film of his. This happens all the time.
But there's also something. Everyone knows when a Woody Allen movie is a Woody Allen movie.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone, even if you are not a big film fan, you are just a regular moviegoer, you know who Woody Allen is, and you might have your own opinions about him, and you might think you don't want to watch his movies because of this or that, but you know who he is.
Yeah.
His movies are sold on his name. As for Birth of a Nation, while, yes, the Oscar campaign and everything is around Nate Parker, your average person in the street has no idea who Nate Parker is.
Sure.
So when they get to the movie theater and they are going to see a poster and say, oh, they're playing Birth of a Nation, it's about Nat Turner, might be interesting, they will go. They will have no idea about his rape scandal. So I don't think it will have a huge effect on the potential box office or something like that. It will have an effect on people who are inside the industry, I think, but maybe not for the general public.
Well, it's interesting. I was just looking at some box office forecasts, and from Deadline, no less. Was this from boxoffice.com? The projections for The Birth of a Nation are lower now than they were. I think there was a projection of it opening at like 23 million and hitting like 95, which seems pretty
Steep.
That was generous just in and of itself. And now, after this week, the projections are down to like 19 opening and 78 like total. I think even that is a little exaggerated.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
But again, I do believe that the majority of people that will see the movie won't readily be aware of the controversy. I do think that anytime the movie is talked about for the rest of the year and into Oscar season, it's going to be impossible to not talk about this. It would look like it was being, swept under the rug. So I think it's going to be there all the time. But
I think it might
a lot of people aren't
affect
going to
critical
care.
reception.
What's that?
Yeah, but I think it might affect critical reception, and if it does, critical reception affects box office, especially from week 2, 3, or 4. So
I think it does for Oscar type of films. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's an example of what I mean. I don't think there will be one single review that does not reference this at all.
I agree.
There can't be, because almost every outlet that's going to be writing about this is going to have had a story about the rape accusations and linked to it anyway. So I don't imagine any review not including this conversation. But yeah, I am very curious to see if those reviews and that reception aren't possibly tainted. But that's even kind of hard to do because it's not like the film's reviews out of Sundance were in the 90s.
Yep.
It's like somewhere in the 70s right now. So I think there's a I guess a wiggle room in there somewhere for this film to receive bad reviews and not look like it's because of this controversy.
Yeah, well, I think it was Devin Faraci who said, like, there are quite a few critics that have seen it that were actually disliked it but withheld their opinion because they didn't want to actually share it.
Yes.
And now that this controversy has come out, I think the people that do dislike it are going to have absolutely no problem trashing it, basically.
Exactly, and that's yes, and I think he made that comment before this started.
Yeah.
But that's one of those weird examples to me. Wow, where critics felt they could not be negative toward this movie publicly because it is about slavery and it would make them look bad to do that. And now they might feel emboldened to be able to do it because of the controversy. I mean, that's fucked up in its own right.
Yeah.
But it's still true.
But it doesn't make it not true. Exactly.
Yeah.
No, I honestly have always felt this about Birth of a Nation. I've actually spoken about this in our first podcast, that given the reactions from Sundance, I've always felt as if they were a bit of an overreaction to Oscar So White, in that none of the reveals were incredibly passionate about the movie. It was decent, but since it started this black young man who was a new name and a new director and writer and actor, it sounded like something that everyone could rally around and carry all the way. And Sundance was, maybe 1 week, 2 weeks after the Oscar nominations came out, so it was still a very fresh subject.
Yes.
So I guess we'll never know what critical reception would have been if Nate Parker hadn't had this rape case in his past. But my personal opinion is that critics would have gone a bit harsher on the film regardless of that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And now, with
good.
that, I think it's done.
Yeah. I think Sundance was the perfect place for it to premiere, and the fact that even there, after that premiere, it's still only sitting mid-70s on Metacritic, and most reviews, they all seem to agree, like, yes, it's an important story, yes, it's, like, passionate filmmaking, but they all seem to agree that it is a bit amateurish, it lacks subtlety, like, they all seem to, like, agree in that regard. And I always sort of thought, after reading those reviews, that later in the year, it would start to suffer, and it would probably end up even lower than that. That's why I never really bought it as like a potential Best Picture winner. Like it always felt to me like a lower tier Best Picture contender.
I'm glad you brought that up, Julia, about your feelings about the film, because that was where I kind of wanted to go next in the conversation, and that was, you know, where we saw the film going as, you know, the Gold Rush Gang, and then where the forums, you know, have maybe changed or pivoted their opinions on it. And you were definitely someone who was, from the beginning, not very bullish on it, where others of us definitely were. And currently, because this last week did a whole lot of to change our predictions quite a bit. And as a preview of the September predictions that'll be out next week, Birth of a Nation is still in the top 5 with the Gold Rush Gang, but there is a tremendous amount of divisiveness in it. We have someone that still has it as a number 1 pick, And Chris, you, for example, have it at number 9 right now. So there's a lot of thought clearly going into what the response and outcome is going to be from critics from Hollywood. Yeah. I don't see, this as being, and even before this controversy, I didn't see it as being a very huge film critically anyway. I think there are other things that are going to take the mantle for, best films and whatnot. But I want to throw to you guys what you feel the realistic outcome for this is going to be. Not critically, but looking at industry, SAG and Oscars, and even the Globes, because I know we've all made a lot of changes now in this as a result.
Yeah, I have it number 9 in Best Picture, and I've dropped it absolutely everywhere else. And I don't know why I've still got it in Best Picture. To be honest, it doesn't really make sense for it to get a lone Best Picture nomination, at least in my eyes. But I think the Globes will probably ignore it. I don't see them touching this. I don't see how the film recovers from this. Like, even if the PR campaign does manage to move the conversation along, I don't expect the critics to go easy on it. I think there'll be a backlash, and I think the fact that the film's going to have to survive not only this controversy but also the critics, I don't see how it survives. If it ends up in the 60s on Metacritic, 65, say, I don't see how it still stays in the race.
Yeah. Julie, what do you think?
Yeah, I have it as my number 6 right now.
Yeah.
But it's dropping by the minute.
And for the record, I have it at number 4 still. I still have it up there. I'm trying not to be super reactionary quite yet, but every day makes me less and less likely to look at it as anything but a failure.
Yeah, it's funny because I've never felt as if Birth of a Nation was a possible Best Picture winner. Mm-hmm. I thought it had a very good chance of a nomination, but it just didn't feel as if it would have been good enough to be a Best Picture winner. And as much as we like to say, and it is actually true, the Oscars are not about the best movies or about the best campaigning. For the Best Picture winner, since Crash, we actually need a movie with a very good reception. Mm-hmm. So I've never felt as if it was a very good Best Picture winner choice, but I've always felt as if its best chances were either in directing or especially acting, mm-hmm. which I don't see happening at all right now, not even as a nomination. The reason why I still have it as my number 6 is because as incompetent as they have been this past week, Fox Searchlight is still Fox Searchlight.
Yes.
So yep. I think they can make it work and they can get it in Best Picture.
I'm just waiting for them to pick something else up.
If they do, if they pick anything else up at any of these festivals, then that I will drop it like a hot rock.
If they pick up Wakefield, I will die.
I wonder if they feel really bad about putting Wilson into March of 2017 now. Because I'll bet they do. Because they could just pull a Weinstein and say, oh, no, we're going to do it in 2016 anyway. That would be the smartest thing they could do. Because they already have that film.
I think that film's probably a flop, to be honest.
It might be, but at least it doesn't have this going against it.
Not in the middle of a race controversy, so it's still a better option than the Birth of a Nation.
Yeah. I would not be surprised if coming out of the festivals they pick up another film. I understand they have to stick with Birth of a Nation. They've invested a lot of money in it. They're not going to abandon it, but it still wouldn't surprise me to see them actually pick up another film, like a Jackie or even a Wakefield, something like that.
Yeah, I'm actually curious about what's in their contract, because we know they are forced to put up an Oscar campaign for the movie.
Yeah,
and to release it in thousands of screens.
Yeah, that's actually a really important element of this, because at first, people that didn't understand or know the contractual obligations were like, oh, they're just going to drop it now. And no, they can't. The reason why Nate Parker went with Fox Searchlight over Netflix, which was offering him $20 million, was the commitment to an over 1,000 screen release and a full court press Oscar campaign, which, he knows they do very, very well. So, but kind of my thoughts on this now, and it does go back to the fact that it's, sitting in the mid-70s on Metacritic, is that this movie needed to be unimpeachable as a film to be able to, I think, get past this controversy. It needed to have, to be honest, 12 Years a Slave reviews and be in the mid-high 90s. And
quite honestly,
it's not going to be.
No, I know, but even if it was, if at least one of the unreleased, unseen movies deliver, 12 Years a Slave wouldn't have beaten Gravity in this kind of controversy. So it would have to have great reveals, and everything else would have to fail.
Yes. I would agree with you there.
I think another thing we need to mention as well, like Nate Parker's the lead actor, he's the producer, he's director, he wrote the film, like every single part of this film he is associated with. Like there's no way of getting around this controversy without him being directly involved in the film. Like Absolutely. Every single aspect of the film and its Oscar prospects are related to him. Like there's going to be no like lone Arnie Hammer nomination because he's not Nate Parker and he's an actor. Like that's not going to happen. Like he needed a strong film and he needed like Parker to get a lead actor nom for him to ride the coattails of that. It's not going to be one of these things where it gets like a lone nomination or something. Like
yes, and it can't go without saying that the fact that Celestin is a co-writer on this is, to me, going to be the single worst element of this controversy for the film. Because even though Parker was acquitted, Celestin was not. And I think that will be a bridge too far for people. Because that's another element that will be in every single review, every single conversation, and every single interview from here forward.
Yeah, I don't see this going away. Like, yes, it's come out in August and the Oscars are in February, but every single review, every single interview, every single bit of campaigning, Q&As, etc., they're going to bring this up. Like, it's going to be an issue for the next 5-6 months. Like, it's completely unavoidable.
It is, and it's kind of ironic that they chose, now to try and get ahead of it, because, obviously it's playing at Toronto, and this would be a part of, the conversations and stuff too. But in starting to get ahead of it early, all they've done is ensure that the next 2 months before the film opens, this is all the conversation is going to be. Yeah. The conversation about the actual film is barely going to be a part of it.
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
I'll be interested to see. Sorry, I'll be interested to see how like Fox Searchlight handle this going forward. Like we've seen their immediate reaction. Like now, I'm interested to see what their campaign is actually going to be based around over the next couple of months.
It is. They're going to have to get some of the very best people in the business to spin this for the film and for themselves.
Yeah. Like, are people like Hammer even going to do interviews, Q&As? Like, are they going to want to show up and be associated with the film anymore? So many questions about the film.
And that brings Gabrielle Union into that.
Yeah.
I can't imagine that she will do any press whatsoever.
Yeah.
And I kind of want to talk about that for a little bit, because not only is this, supposed to be Nate Parker's really big breakthrough, this really needed to be a good breakthrough for like Aja Naomi King and Gabrielle Union in a huge, major, visible Oscar film. And that's completely tainted for them now.
Yeah.
It's the thing that people that that commit really atrocious crimes never think about, and that is anything outside of themselves and their own fallout. They don't think about the fallout of other people that are surrounding them. And this is going to have a negative impact on everybody involved in the film, regardless of their knowledge or not. And it's a really shitty affair.
Yeah. And obviously, Hammer's sort of stayed quiet. I think he'll obviously be fine. He's in Nocturnal Animals. Like, his career's not going to be affected by this. But like you say, Naomi King was in with a shot of a nomination. That's probably dead now. Like, there are a lot of people that could have had big breakouts from this that have been completely buried because of this controversy.
Yeah. I was kind of thinking at the beginning of the podcast that we'd, talk a little bit about this and then move on to other subjects, but I don't see that as very realistic or possible.
It's all connected. We were predicting it for pretty much every single category.
Sure.
So.
Sure. But I mean, what I mean is that I had like my list of like, okay, cool, let's talk about, Arrival and its media blitz and let's, I don't want to now. I don't want to talk about other films. I don't want to have it in the same breath as the conversation that we're having about this.
Yeah. Well, I managed to sneak a Wakefield shout out in there. So,
you did,
there you
yes, which is good.
Bryan Cranston coming for nomination number 2.
Oh my gosh.
He's coming for the win.
He could. It would be a much more open year. So what I think I want to do is move that any conversation about other films and stuff to the next podcast, and let them have their own conversation and not be, overly sullied by this one. So I think it's probably best, and I know, Chris, you need to take off soon. I think it might be a great opportunity to wrap this one up. I think an hour of conversation about this is probably going to be a lot for people to want to listen to. And I hope, like I said at the top, I hope that we have been able to speak about it with integrity and knowledge as much as possible. So unless you guys have anything more to say, I would feel very comfortable in wrapping and letting us have another podcast in the future where we can talk about the rest of the films that we have, because it's only August 21st.
Yeah.
We're not even at the end of the month where we normally do the podcast, but I did not want to escape any more time without being able to address this and address it on its own. So, does that sound good for you guys?
Yep.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Well, I greatly appreciate both of your participation in this. And you're very, very, very popular. So I'm always glad to have both of you on.
It's always fun.
It is. And I thank everybody for listening, and I would definitely encourage feedback and conversation on this, and you can do that in our forums. You can do that on the main page when this podcast is posted. You can do that on Twitter, anywhere that you would like, because conversation is incredibly important about this. So thank you for listening, and don't forget to follow us on Twitter at awards_watch, and like us on Facebook, and hit awardswatch.com, and plenty of conversation about this film, and all films of the Oscar season are happening in there. Just jump right into the film news and the film predictions threads, and say what you need, say what you want. And yeah, I think we're good for today. So thank you again, Chris and Julia, for being a part of this.
Thank you, Eric.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Bye, everyone.